Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're jumping into Leviticus chapter 3.
Right.
And this chapter gets surprisingly specific about one type of offering, the fellowship offering.
Yes. Sometimes called the peace offering. And you're right about the specifics. It's quite detailed.
Yeah, if you think biblical instructions are, always kind of general, this chapter is different, especially about, well, certain animal parts.
Exactly. It's distinct from some other offerings. It's not just about consecration. There's this communal meal element, which is where the fellowship or peace idea comes in. Chapter 3 really lays out the sacred part of that ritual.
Okay, so basics first. The source says you bring an animal, and it has to be without defect. Standard enough. But what kind of animals could it be?
The text is pretty clear on that. You had choices. From the herd, so cattle, male or female, interesting.
Okay, either gender?
Yes, or from the flock. That means sheep or goats. And again, male or female allowed. So, some flexibility based on what people actually had.
Makes sense. So you picked your animal. What happens next according to the source? What are the steps?
Well, first, the person bringing the offering, the offerer, lays their hand on the animal's head.
Okay, that symbolic connection.
Precisely. Identification with the sacrifice. Then the animal is slaughtered right there at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
And the blood.
The priests handle that. They take the blood and sprinkle it on all sides of the altar.
Right, okay. So blood dealt with, animal prepared. Now this is where chapter 3 really zooms in on the unique rules for this offering, isn't it? Especially what's offered by fire to the Lord.
Yes, this is the core of the chapter's specific instructions. It's heavily focused on the fat.
It's just fat in general.
Well, specifically, all the fat covering the internal organs and also the fat that's, connected to them.
All of it. That seems emphatic.
It is. The text uses that phrasing, all the fat. And it gets even more specific. It calls out both kidneys plus the fat that's on them near the loins.
Kidneys and their fat, too.
And the covering of the liver, that's supposed to be removed along with the kidneys.
That's a remarkable level of detail. Why focus so intensely on these fatty parts and these specific organs?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Fat was seen as the richest part, the energy source, maybe the best part of the animal in ancient thinking.
So reserving it all.
Exactly. Reserving all of it, plus these vital organs like kidneys and the liver covering, specifically for God, for the fire. It elevates that portion. It's saying this richest, most valuable part belongs solely to the Lord. Sets it completely apart.
And wasn't there an even more specific rule if the animal was a lamb? Something really visual?
Yes. Good point. If it's a lamb from the flock, the instructions include the entire fat tail.
The whole tail?
The whole fat tail, yes. Cut off close to the backbone. That gets added to the fire with the other fatty parts. It really underscores that all the fat idea.
Definitely. So where do these parts actually get burned?
On the altar. The text mentions it's often placed on top of the burnt offering that might already be burning there on the wood.
Like layering the offerings?
Sort of, yeah. The burnt offering as a base and these special fatty portions of the fellowship offering go on top, consumed by the fire.
The text describes this fire offering in a couple ways. It mentions an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
Right, for herd and goat offerings?
But for flock and goat offerings, it also just says food. What's the significance of those terms?
They both point to divine acceptance, I think. Pleasing aroma suggests, divine satisfaction, sensory pleasure in the offering. Food is maybe more direct, metaphor for sustenance, or just a visceral way of saying the divine fire accepts and consumes it.
Okay, and circling back to that intense focus on fat, the text explicitly states, right after listing these parts, all the fat is the Lord's. That feels like the main takeaway here.
Absolutely. It's the central declaration underpinning these rules. It's not just ritual procedure, it's a theological statement. Giving all the fat signifies acknowledging God's ownership, God's priority over this valuable, life-giving part.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing for that ceremony. The source calls it a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, wherever you live. What was the rule that carried forward?
It's a direct prohibition. Don't eat any fat or any blood.
Oh, okay.
It flows right from this principle. The fat belonged on the altar fire, and the blood, representing life, was also considered sacred, belonging to God. So humans shouldn't consume either.
So when you put it all together, the very specific organs, the insistence on all the fat, that fat tail detail, the declaration, all the fat is the Lord's, and this lasting ban, what does this intense focus tell us about this offering's meaning, or maybe ancient views on, connecting with the divine?
It paints a picture of a really symbolic system. Think about it. In a world where fat meant survival, energy, wealth, deliberately setting aside all of the richest part for God, that's a profound act.
Yeah, seems like a big deal.
It suggests deep reverence, dependence, maybe gratitude. It wasn't just giving an animal, it was about offering the absolute best, the most vital parts, as a sign of peace or covenant with the divine.
Okay, so summing up our deep dive on Leviticus 3, the fellowship offering involved a perfect animal herd, flock, or goat.
Hmm.
Key steps were laying on hands, slaughter, sprinkling blood, but the real focus was the fire offering. Specific fatty parts, inner fat, kidneys, liver covering, and for lambs, the whole fat
All
tail,
burned on the altar.
declared as belonging entirely to the Lord. And this led to that permanent rule against eating fat or blood.
It's a fascinating glimpse into a very specific ancient mindset and practice.
Definitely. And something for you to think about. In a culture where fat was so vital, maybe even scarce at times, what was the real impact spiritually, communally, of reserving all of it for God? Especially in an offering that, remember, also involved a shared meal. What does giving up that most valuable part truly signify?